Thank you, Marcelles, for coming out to the podcast. So you actually reached out to me, which was nice. I appreciate that. So you're an author on the wiki, but just give a little intro to like who you are and what you do.
Hi, my name is Marcelles Rayne, an author for the SCP wiki and also full-time Walmart employee, dad of soon-to-be two, and I guess that's about it. I don't really do anything special. I just write weird fiction on the internet.
I mean, hey, that's why you're here. So, I mean, you briefly mentioned the Walmart thing, and so it immediately made me think of your Cannibal at Chin's tale. So do you want to start off with that one? Kind of like what inspired that and the SCP that accompanies that tale?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So working at Cannibal Chin's and 5980, the SCP article that's based on, they actually weren't based on Walmart. They're based on a place called Fuddruckers in New Jersey.
Yeah. I know Fuddruckers.
And it's right off of Route 3, and it's like this weird sort of like dingy area. It feels like you're going into a whole other dimension when you're there. And there was this one guy that worked there, and he was like really greasy and just really sketchy for no reason. And so he became the basis for Ethan Chin, 5980, and he's the guy that or 5980 is about how Ethan tries to like sell parts of himself because he's a self-healing cannibal. So he decided at some point that he was just going to chop himself to pieces because he can just heal automatically, and pass that off as food and start a restaurant, which he did. And it was very successful for a long time until the Foundation got involved and shut him down.
So I actually didn't get to read that SCP, but when I was reading the tale, I love the disembodied hand because I grew up loving Addams Family, so Frederick was a nice touch. But I was kind of wondering, there was like these involvements with like ghosts and a lot of like supernatural stuff going on at the restaurant as well. Like, what was up with that?
Okay, so at this one Fuddruckers, there was always people, because me and my friends used to go there a lot. There was always people that we would see going into the restaurant just one time, and then we'd never see them again. And the employees would talk about these people, and we would all know who they were talking about, but they would never come back, like, at all. And we have no idea what happened to them. And we never found out what happened to them. So at some point, I just assumed that they died. And then that goes back into the whole sort of cannibalism thing with them, chopping them up, turning them into burgers and stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's fun. I'm like a huge fan of the whole like alternate reality, disturbing kind of like twist on like corporate culture or pop culture stuff. So it was nice. And I actually grew up. I grew up in New York, like Long Island area, and we used to have Fuddruckers, but now they're all gone. So it was it was a nice callback, at least for me. Yeah, I don't know why they're just all gone now. But yeah, I'm glad that I'm not the only person who knows who they are.
Yeah, me too.
So, okay. Yeah, I'm assuming you kind of answered this one already, but like there's also in the basement, there's like this demon just that kind of lives there. Is that related to like processing the humans or things like that? Like, or is it just kind of like the evil thing he just has in his basement and no one knows why?
It was kind of just that evil thing that he has in his basement, and it's just kind of inexplicably there. Mm-hmm. It's just a part of the establishment. No one really knows what it is or why it's there. And in working on Cannibal Chin's, Ethan's the only one that ever goes down there safely, because we found out what happens to the protagonist down there. He ends up getting all his teeth stolen and he wakes up unconscious in the bathroom a little while later. But for whatever reason, Ethan's the only one that goes down there regularly. And we don't really know why. It's just part of the place and how it works.
That's fun, yeah. Leave it up to the viewers, the audience, to run their theories. I'm assuming the whole like your teeth falling out in the mirror is just like classic like anxiety dream and stuff kind of like that, right?
Oh yeah, I absolutely. Teeth is one of the worst horror things for me. I'm so paranoid about my teeth. I take such good care of them, and I'm always afraid that something bad's going to happen to them.
I literally had a dream last night. Like, I'm not making this up. I literally had a dream last night where, like, I only had nubs. Sorry, I guess I only had like nubs for teeth left, and they're all just like this brown, flaky material that was left where my teeth should have been. And I was just like, I was oddly calm though for some reason. I don't know why. And I was like, oh, I just gotta get this checked out. So, yeah, it was strange. But I think for me, what made it strange was how calm I felt with how disturbing like the imagery was. So, but I haven't had, yeah, that's an interesting one. I guess you're not a fan of any sort of like toothy, tunneled, like turtle or something like that. Yeah, yeah.
Definitely not.
Well, I'm curious. Do you have like? Is this like almost like a little universe where there's like multiple different like corporate chains or restaurants or things like that? Well, I know he mentions in this that Cannibal Chains isn't a chain, but do you have like other like restaurants in your world that kind of also have this like weird, dark twist to them?
There were a couple of the restaurants, and a lot of the corporations that I write about are usually pretty dark and like mysterious for no real reason. I guess it's because I spent a lot of time now working in the corporate world and just kind of seeing how it works on the other side. And I guess that kind of like inspired me to write like the Walmart cult. I think it's 1534. And that's about a group of fifthdists that work in the ship from store department, and they basically summon a giant starfish monster to get people to buy more items, and then they die afterward because their metabolism increases so fast, and they just fizzle out and burn after they make the purchase. I guess.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I guess just a lot of it was just inspired by me now working at Walmart and seeing all this stuff.
Yeah, I used to work at CVS when I was younger. And man, retail is one of the most brutal jobs I've ever had. There's just something to it. This like, I don't want to get too depressing, but I mean, fuck it. Fuck Walmart and CVS. Just like this feeling of like this uncaring entity that like you're relying on. And just also the sense of like everything feeling so like disposable and like detached from meaning and purpose. And that's how I just feel about most like large retail stores, whether you work at them or like just go to them as a customer. There's just something very like empty feeling about it. And that's why I feel like the whole allegory of like kind of like satanic, demonic, like rituals and cults relating to corporations just feels so right, especially because of also the cliche of like the corporation destroying the earth for like a very short-term goal. And it's like a very obvious bad ending. I just feel like it's like a perfect little mixture waiting to happen.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then, okay, so I'll move on because we're pretty tight on time for this one. But the other, I guess we'll start with the tales. Why not? We're in the tale territory and they kind of segue into some of the SCPs. But the other tale I read was Totally Not Porn, which was nice to see. I actually haven't read a lot of Are We Cool Yet tales. But I do have a few questions. So it's kind of a cool concept where basically they're just like in some dude's apartment and there's just a bunch of like heads on pikes. And it seems like they're alive, ? The heads. Like they're still responsive and moving around. And then basically it's like these two artists that are essentially these like struggling artists who are like living paycheck to paycheck, trying to generate as many like art ideas as possible. It's just, well, not quantity wise, but they keep, or it seems like they're working from idea to idea to idea to try to sell it at the next auction and then the next auction and then the next auction. But one of the questions I had was, because I saw in the tag you had a MC and Dark tag at the bottom. Is that the auctions are held by MC and Dark and they're selling, and that these guys are like one of the people in the art collective of Aussie?
Yeah, one of their Mark and Paul, the auctions are held by Marshall Carter and Dark, but this particular one, they're actually going to uh, try and rob them because they're so short on bread. Because shit, I forgot which one. One of them spent all of the rent money on a vaporization to try and make this art
Mark.
piece, the severed heads.
Mm-hmm.
And that vaporization, wiping everyone's memories, erasing all of the DNA and everything, that was very expensive. And it wasn't really worth the art installation, but it still kind of looks cool, so that's why he did it. But now they need to go rob Marshall Carter and Dark because they're out of money again.
And then he also had that like stick that he gave to Paul. Did he create that, or was that just like a magic artifact that like he found or stole?
Oh, that was something that he made.
Okay.
And I tried to imply that all of the pikes that the heads were on were also had those runes on them, because that's what's keeping the heads alive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what allowed the magic to work.
Okay.
Or, excuse me, the an art or whatever.
Yeah. That was actually a really cool sequence. I like that a lot, where like he was transforming Paul. I'm assuming as a disguise, because you were mentioning how it's basically kind of like a heist that they're going on. Afterwards. Not a fun time. You guys should read that one if you want to figure out why I like it, but also why it was a pretty intense transformation. And that was totally not porn for people who didn't know. And then, okay, so the other tale I read was the final termination attempt. It was odd, definitely unexpected.
I got so much shit for that.
I'm sure you did. Like, I'm like, wow. Like, yeah, tell me. Like, I kind of want to hear people's responses that you heard.
All right. So the whole reason I wrote that was because I got really, and I've been recently on this whole kick of like all these popular characters only ever being depicted one way. Like Bright's either only like a murder hobo or some depressed sociopath or whatever. Mm-hmm. 682 is this unkillable, uncaring monster or whatever. And I was just like, you know what, fuck that. That's boring. These characters have been the same way for 12 years. Why are they, no one's done anything different. So I sat down for like an hour and I'm like, fuck it. How can I kill 682 in the most boring, mundane way possible? And then I was playing Fallout recently and I'm like, the shittiest gun in that game is a Chinese pistol. So I'm like, fuck it. I'll just use the Chinese pistol to kill 682. It seems perfectly fitting. And, yeah, a lot of people on like Reddit and Facebook, I got yelled at a lot. Because they said it wasn't canon and that a normal pistol wouldn't work on him, and I'm like, yeah, but it did. They're like, yeah, but no, it didn't. You're wrong, and I'm right. I'm like, but I wrote the piece. How am I wrong? Get out of here.
Well, like you definitely really implied this, like him aging and like him not being like eternal. Like it was almost like he's been like worn down, and this is like the last kind of like him giving up. So it kind of makes sense that like something so small would be like what ends him.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was going for too. It's like he's been around for a long time. The lizard's been through a lot of shit, and he's just tired of it.
Yeah, but I like that. It was a nice little because I'm not a huge fan of the endless extermination attempts. I mean, they were fun when they came out, I guess, but again, it kind of dried down a little too long, that whole trend.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It felt like those like, what if Superman and Batman fought each other and how would they kill each other?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just like, just kill him. It's super easy. It's justified. Everything's here. He's old. He's tired. Mm-hmm. The D class has been there for a while as well. There's parallels being drawn between these two characters, and now he's dead.
I thought that was also kind of interesting how your lore was kind of talking about the idea that like middle-aged D-class are uncommon because either they take so long to get to the facilities that they're of old age, or they don't live long, so they come young and they die young. But yeah, that was an interesting concept.
Yeah, I usually try and keep them like that. That's how I always picture the Foundation.
Yeah. So you actually briefly were talking about how like writing Dr. Bright differently. So I think that's like a perfect segue into 6800. So this was interesting. It almost like confused me because of how different of a take on Bright it was. I was like, oh shit. So before we get into it though, this is basically a Church of the Broken God SCP / the Fae, which I actually don't know what the Fae are from. I've heard of them before. I don't know if they're directly related to the original Church of the Broken God canon, or if that's just like a normal fantasy trope.
Not to my knowledge. As far as I know on the wiki, no one's ever put these two together before.
Oh, okay.
I know the Fae, as far as I know, the Fae are originated in 4000. They might have been from earlier, but that was the first I've ever heard of them. And then the Broken Church obviously has been around since Hammer Maiden's been around, which was a very long time ago.
It's probably one of the most popular canons out there on the Foundation. But do you want to? That's a pretty big one. Do you want to just kind of give a quick rundown of like what 6800 is about?
All right, so 6800, the White Ashes. That's pretty much the story of Fae genocide, I guess, is the most blatant way to put it. Basically, one of the Maxwellists from the Church of the Broken God, one of them found this holy text that depicted Saint Hedwig, just killing a Fae and turning them into Pignite, this apparently holy material that's supposed to bring Juan into the world and make him whole, because Juan is the Maxwellist version of the Broken God. And so they took that to their church, and the church was like, yeah, this sounds like a reasonable and awesome thing to do. Let's fucking do it. And so they did. And they went into 4000. They started killing all of the fairy creatures there, which is what the first journal is about, with the girl with no name. Mm-hmm. And because they started doing that, it started snowing in the Amazon. And this is where a lot of like the suspension of disbelief really takes a hard turn, and I've kind of realized that the Foundation realizes that it's snowing in the Amazon, and they poor baby. My son's trying to get in here.
No worries.
But they realize that it's snowing in the Amazon, and they're just like, yeah, no, it's not really that big a deal. It's probably climate change. We got more important things to do. And I realized that they probably would have sent an investigation team over there anyway, just to make sure. But at the time, I was just like, fuck it, I'll just write it off. I'll come back to it later, fix it probably. And I never did. But anyway, it starts snowing in the Amazon. The Fae start being killed, Pignite starting to be produced. And this continues until the snowstorm starts picking up, and that's when the Foundation starts to get involved, and they're like, hey, the Maxwellists they're up to no good, but we don't really know what the hell is actually going on, and by that point it's too late for them to really do anything. So the Maxwellists keep killing all of the Fae. Then Prometheus Labs, they realized, what's happening, and they realize that they need the Fae to make the Pignite, because Pignite also keeps people warm, and it's getting increasingly colder, and there's no other way to, produce viable warmth in how anomalously cold it's getting. So Prometheus Labs is like, hey, we can, harness these people and farm them, quite literally, using, I believe they used 5918, the bag of sunflower seeds that grows human body parts. I believe they used that as well, or maybe they used something else. I don't remember at this time.
Yeah,
But anyway,
they were mentioning like the idea of like harvesting their limbs, like arms and things like that. That's what I
oh
remember.
yeah, yeah, and they did use 5918, that thing I just mentioned. I do remember that now.
Oh, okay.
So they ended up using that and a bunch of other techniques to try and make the most of these fairies while they still have them, which in and of itself is kind of fucked. Like a whole civilization's just being reduced to cattle, basically, because the Maxwellists want to bring their god back to life, which ultimately doesn't work. Like, they tried everything, and they just, at the end, they realized that they've just killed all these people for no reason. And poor Eckhart, who's the fairy from the journal entries, she's kind of just left alone because all her family's dead. Her mom's dead, her dad's dead. Old man Java, he ultimately dies, and she ends up taking Bright's name. And I tried to depict Bright a little differently here as well, as a more like serious, kind of somber guy who just wants to do his job, but he feels really bad about it because he knows how shitty it is. And he was just trying to do his job, and she was just trying to survive. So she took his name and then told the guard standing outside that Bright in her body was trying to, be up to no good. And they shot him, or they shot her. However it works. They shot Bright, and Eckhart got to live, and she became the new 05. And that's where that ends for now. I'm working on DLC for that. That's going to be released eventually.
Okay, yeah. I can see that. Because I'm assuming there's some questions that need to be answered. Like, I mean, for me, I was curious as to, like, why it failed to bring Wan back. I'm not sure if like you're gonna focus on that stuff, but I thought it was kind of interesting to see also like how complicit the Foundation was about it. Like it was just that kind of like sense of like standing by and doing nothing is just as bad as like actively doing the harm. I'm a huge fan personally of like the Foundation being this like kind of not good system where it's basically, I almost like the idea of the Foundation is like the US during like the Cold War and now, where it's basically like on the surface it's like this very nice, good, positive force, but then if you look at like kind of what goes behind the scenes with a lot of like CIA operations and a lot of like the dirty work, you kind of realize, oh, things aren't as clear as like good and bad. This is very like morally dubious organization.
That's pretty much what I was trying to depict in the White Ashes as well. It's like they were more focused on containing other anomalies that they thought were a world threat. And I always had this idea in my head that the Foundation's on the border of financial collapse always. So they only have like a certain amount of resources available across the globe, and all of those resources at the time were spent looking at other anomalies that they thought were more dangerous, until this grew out of proportion. And by the time it got to that point, it was too late to really do anything.
Yeah, no, you definitely got that across, which is why I liked it a lot. I'm also not a huge fan of like, oh, we can just do whatever because we're the Foundation and we have like no real like limitations other than like there's a bigger, badder evil out there. It just doesn't feel grounded, But
yeah,
that's just my taste. No, I'm not gonna say like one canon is superior than another canon out there for the Foundation.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah. So okay, we are running out of time. So real quick, I do want to just you have these two other shorter SCPs that I also read that I enjoyed, which was SCP-5979 and SCP-5249. 5979 was kind of like seemed like kind of like a funny, like almost like a Valentine's kind of SCP, where it's kind of like a bad breakup between like two celestial bodies. That's pretty much it, right? I don't know if I'm.
Yeah, pretty much it. Like on the surface level, that's about it. But really, that was the story of my first girlfriend and how I broke up with her because someone basically told me to. And I was just like, all right, sure, whatever, fine. then I felt really bad about it afterward. Uh, and I was just thinking about that whole situation. I'm just like, I can make an SCP out of this. And that's where 5979 came from.
Was it like typical like middle school or early high school romance kind of thing?
Yeah, for our, I think we started dating freshman year, and I broke up with her sophomore year.
Yeah. Very relatable experience.
Yeah.
Okay, just because we're short on time. And then the other one I thought was actually really sweet and really touching and very, very sad was your 5249, which was basically about this singer who could like briefly remanifest his lost child and kind of get to interact with them again. The only thing that I wasn't sure about was did this like SCP also prevent them from having a new child, or were they eventually able to have a new child? Because you mentioned how like his wife was pregnant, but you don't really get to see the wife or the supposed child afterwards.
Yeah. No, they did end up having another child. At the end, I think I put a note or something that said that O'Malley and his wife and another new child were there during the performance, or during his next performance a couple years later.
Yeah, I blanked on that one. No, okay, yeah.
But yeah, that was about. My wife lost a baby earlier this year in January, and I was feeling really sad about that for a really long time. And I decided to write about it to try and cope a little bit.
Yeah, it must be really, really hard. But
yeah,
I mean, I definitely felt that though. Like reading this, just kind of like I had a feeling it had to be from a personal story, just because it just had that fingerprint on it of like this is like a personal experience, kind of like the art becoming therapeutic in that sense.
Yeah, I can't sing or play guitar or anything. You get the point.
Yeah. I mean, for me, that's why I'm in filmmaking art. It's the therapeutic aspect of it for me. It's kind of what's helped me kind of express a lot of my issues and troubles. So I think that's really when it's probably the most satisfying as a creator, or more. I don't know about satisfying, but like words. I'm blanking on the word that I want, but I'm sure you know what I mean, just from like the personal experience.
100%.
And I also just feel, I mean, what's even more powerful is like for people who've probably been through similar experiences, and they can kind of like feel that by reading your stuff. So, yeah. How much more time do you have before I just want to make sure we have more time, or if you're headed out soon, just because I know you're saying.
I got about like 10 minutes, give or take.
Okay. We have a little more time than I thought.
Hi, baby.
I'm curious. So they opened up the new series. Are you working on anything for that? Because I don't know if it's open yet, but I know they announced it.
Yeah, it's definitely open. I already have something out for Series 7, 6801, which is an Unhuman tale, which is also a new canon, which is pretty cool. And the Unhuman canon is set in sort of this post-apocalyptic world where only like immortals or conditional immortals, I guess you could say, where only like conditional immortals are still around. They're still like regular normal humans, but they're very few and far in between. It's mostly monsters and undead and sentient machines and all that. It's pretty cool. And 6801 is where I've killed Sophia Light in the past, pre-apocalypse, and post-apocalypse she comes back as one of the undead, and she finds out an SCP document about how she died and was brought back to life. And that's part of a tale series I'm doing, but it's not very developed.
No worries. That's interesting though that you're already in action working on a thing already. I mean, I'm assuming most people are kind of like jump on it the second a series is announced, because I think it's only been open for a few weeks now. I'm always a little behind with
Yeah.
these. So
I think a week or two.
yeah. And I mean, for people who don't know, what's the whole theme with Series 7?
All right. So, as far as I know, Series 7 is more about just storytelling, and the contest for the SCP-6000 slot was about nature. So, most of them are usually based loosely off of what the KCON entry or the winning KCON entry was, which in this case is Rounder House's SCP-6000. So, a lot of them are probably going to be somewhat meta, I'm predicting.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't had that much time to read, unfortunately.
Same here, sadly. Carpin is actually being an angel and compiling a list of like what he thinks are like must reads for the new series.
Oh yeah, he's great. He's great with that.
So I'm like, thank you so much, because I'm like, I don't have the time to read like 1,000 new articles. I don't even I haven't even read all of the Series 5 stuff. So yeah, it's I like just trying to chip away at them at least. I mean, you can attest to how busy like I've been. Like we've had to push off this podcast a month, 2 months.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And people watching the podcast sure have also noticed that I haven't been really posting on the podcast as much lately, because I'm really trying to focus on getting my first animated film out, and then I'm in the midst of working on my second SCP animated film. But yeah, thanks for coming on. I'm actually curious. How did you? I'm sure you texted me this earlier, but how did you kind of hear about like the podcast, or like hear about us?
Oh, Gregory Carpin or Gregory Carp. I'm not actually sure how to say his name.
I think it's
Gregory.
I think it's Gregory.
But he's the one who told me about it, and he's like, "Hey, I'm coming too, baby." But he's the one who told me about it, and he's like, "Yeah, just give him a text and see if you'll get interviewed."
Cool.
And that was that.
Thanks, Gregory. But yeah, any last things you want to chat about or shout out before you wrap things up?
Just be sure to check out my articles, please. I'm trying very hard.
Well, I'll have links to everything in the description, so it's very easy for you guys to click on it. No excuses. And you have like, even if you don't want to read all of his articles, you were nice enough to have a nice top 5 of your top 5 SCPs and top 5 tales. So at least check those out. Come on, guys.
Oh yeah, for sure.
At least.
Oh dear, my son's running away. I should probably get him.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. Finally, I'm sorry about like all the holds up. Life's been kind of a mess for me lately, but
it's been a mess for me too.
Well, thankfully, a good mess for me. Just very busy trying to get this freaking film out. But yeah, thanks for coming on. Feel free to send me any new stuff you write and stuff like that, because I do definitely like to try to at least write, try to read the stuff that like guests have had and written on. So yeah.
All right. I definitely will. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Anytime. All right. Well, have a good one. Thanks for coming on.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one.
Peace.
Bye.
All right. That is a wrap.